Okay, this is a continuation of the question that we solved before, and I added the part E to it in order to make it a complete question. So if you remember the question, approximately 30% of American high school students drop out of school before graduation. Choose 5 students entering high school at random, and let X be the number of students who drop out of school before graduation. We saw that this was a binomial distribution or binomial experiment, but we get a binomial distribution from it. And now we are asking the question of finding the mean, the variance, and standard deviation for the number of students who drop out of school before graduation. So this means for X. This here is exactly what X is. So we want to know these 3 values. But we just remember, we have computed this already in part 1 of this question. The number of trials here, n, is 5 because we have 5 students. The probability of success, p, is 30% or 0.3. The probability of failure, which is q, is 1 minus p, which is 0.7 or 70%. And that's all what we need in order to compute the mean, the variance, and the standard deviation. There are formulas for them, and they are very simple formulas. But before I go to the next page, just remember these 3 numbers here, because we're going to use them when we solve the mean, variance, and standard deviation. Okay, so for a binomial distribution, look here, this is only when you have a binomial distribution. The mean, mu, is n times p, the variance, sigma square, is n times p times q, and the standard deviation is the square root of the variance. Let us change the colors again. I'm sorry for this, but it looks better with different colors. So let's give these colors to each one of them, and then use the same color to solve it. So now, for our question, before I answer, I will just write them again. Remember that n was 5, p is 0.3, and q is 1 minus p, which is 0.7. Just keep this in mind. Sometimes they give you the question just like this. They give you n and p. They don't need to give you q. Once you know p, if it's given already, you find 1 minus p and it would give you q. So sometimes you have this and you are asked to find the mean, variance, and standard deviation without knowing the question. So these are what you need to know. These 3 are what you need to know in order to answer the 3 questions. So let's start with the mean, mu. Mu is, so it's called the mean. Remember also that we call it the expected value. This is the expected value of x, where x, remember, x is the number of students who drop out of school before graduation. So what do we expect? It's good to know what is the expected value. On the other hand, we also call it the mean when we do probability distributions. It's n times p, which is, here is n and here is p. Just multiply them. So this would be 5 times 0.3, and this would give you exactly 1.5. So you can say I expect that 1.5 students who enter high school will end up dropping out. Of course, 0.5, you know that it doesn't make sense for human beings, like there is no half a human being. But this is a mathematical expectation. Okay, now the variance, which is the second one, the variance, sigma square is equal to n times p times q. And in this case, it would be 5 times p is 0.3 times q is 0.7. And if you do it on your calculator, you'll get approximately 1.050. Okay, and that would be our variance in this question. And the last one is the standard deviation, sigma. And we know that sigma is just the square root of the variance, which is n times p times q, that we already calculated in the previous one. We have it here. So it's the square root of 1.050, which is approximately, if you calculate it to 3 decimals, it will be 1.025. Okay? And that would be our standard deviation. Just before I finish, I just want to tell you that we understood, we understand the mean when we have a probability distribution. The mean, because we can also call it the expected value, it means what you expect to get from the experiment. Like when you have 5 students, you are expecting mathematically that 1.5 of them will be dropping out of school. So this is like the success, the mean for the success in our experiment. Remember, success meant that the student dropped out before graduation. So expected value is 1.5. The variance here and the standard deviation, you still probably don't see their significance yet. You might know the significance of them, but things will become much clearer when you study more distributions, and then you understand what does this number tell us exactly. Okay? Usually the standard deviation and the mean tell you a lot about your data distribution. But for this question, we have answered it. The question was to find the mean, the variance, and standard deviation. It didn't ask you to interpret your answers. I'm just trying to make you understand it better. But know that as you move on and solve more questions and understand more distributions, then these numbers will start making more sense to you. You will understand what they mean. Not just know how to calculate them, but understand what they mean. And I will stop this question here.